to the T-Hud Popcast, episode number 2. I'm Marty.
I'm Moby.
And I'm Leland.
I can't believe we're already on episode number 2, guys. We're
Crazy.
here. We made it.
It's almost like we're sitting here just banging them out one back to back to back.
Sweating in the hot Vancouver sun. Yes.
It's a beautiful day for a podcast, guys. This episode, we're going to be tackling a few different things. One of the items is going to be a kind of a movie review discussion about the new Spider-Man film, Spider-Man Homecoming.
Spoilers.
Definitely spoilers.
Always.
So many spoilers. Leland, it's just some rough kind of discussion on it before we dive into the topic.
Rough. Yeah, okay. Like what we're going to be talking
What are we
about?
going to be talking about?
Well, I mean, I'm interested in hearing you guys, your comparisons of just the role of Peter Parker between Holland and Maguire and Garfield. I definitely have some
to say there.
Yeah, I got some thoughts on that too.
Okay. And,
Yeah, in my case, I think a lot of my thoughts are actually going to be contained to the film itself. I have a lot of opinions on this particular iteration of Spider-Man, and that isn't to be ominous in thinking that,
Right.
I hated it. I quite enjoyed it, but I have some thoughts about it. I will confess, I have not seen The Amazing Spider-Man 1 or 2, so I cannot comment on those.
Okay.
Except that Jamie Foxx looked ridiculous, and I feel like I dodged a bullet.
Okay, we'll get to that.
We definitely will. All right, and then also for Crazy for Cardboard, Leland, what are we going to be discussing today?
What are we going to be discussing today? Well, I, being the guy who usually teaches the games, I just was, I was interested in hearing you guys' thoughts about the way you learn games and kind of what aids you or what inhibits you from grokking a game. And maybe just to give to our listener who might be in the same situation, maybe some tips on how to, do's and don'ts, maybe some rough do's and don'ts of teaching a game.
It's an excellent topic. It's one I think Leland should have brought up a year and a half ago when he first started collecting board games and trying to teach us. But as the cliche goes, better late than never. In the video game segment, this is a segment that's very close to my heart, the variety show. We're going to discuss retro gaming a little bit, and we've got a number of topics on that I'm quite interested in bringing up. So
yeah, it's going to be exciting. I think retro gaming's huge right now with the SNES Classic around the corner. The first one where I'm like salivating over getting my hands on, which sounds impossible at this point.
Yeah, right.
I'm excited to talk about it and really excited to just dive into retro gaming in general.
Well, let's do it.
Yeah, okay.
Let's do it.
So, first segment is going to be a video game variety show. It was still our working title because I haven't had time to think about anything else. And the topic today is just a retro gaming discussion. It's going to be a kind of a general discussion. It's a big picture discussion on retro gaming. The recent popularity. We really want to look at stuff like the SNES Classic, the NES Classic from last year, the immense popularity. Why is it popular? Moby, what do you think?
I think honestly nostalgia's a big seller. And I mean that sounds cliche.
Nostalgia is the seller.
The seller. Well, what have you got? You've got a bunch of people now in their 40s especially, their 30s that grew up with the Nintendo Entertainment System. Those systems did not exactly last long in Mother's humid basement, and we all know about endlessly blowing on the cartridges for 20 minutes to try to make them work.
Does not actually work.
It doesn't work. But
it damages them.
It does.
Don't spit in your games.
Okay, I promise, Leland, you'll never do it again, Leland.
Do not spit in the SNES Classic.
But, so here's the thing. So all of a sudden, Nintendo out of the blue drops this system, which looks like a NES, but it's preloaded, and honestly, I think we can all agree the library was excellent for that NES.
I'd get it. I'd want it. I'd play them.
100%, and it's...
I might only play them for a day or two, but I'd play them.
Exactly, but for the price point... It was amazing, but the big issue was getting it.
Oh, yeah. I don't understand that decision. I do not.
I don't understand it. And this is a marketing thing, and I really don't understand why Nintendo did that. I honestly think it's not Nintendo-like. if you look at Operation Rainfall, which was a write-in, email-in campaign to get Xenoblade Chronicles Last Story in Pandora's Tower released, Nintendo was receptive to that. So they knew they had this demand, and what did they do? They throttled the amount of systems that they put on the market. And it's ridiculous. I want a NES Classic. I can't get one because I look on eBay and these things are $500.
Yeah, it's nuts.
And you know what? It sucks, and I don't know why they limited that.
Yeah, the demand is clearly there.
Yes.
It feels like Nintendo is not fulfilling the customer's desires right now.
Yeah.
And I can look to the NES Classic, the SNES Classic, which might be going down the same road, even with the increased production. If you look at like Walmart recently having consoles available for pre-order, then they don't. It's every time I look for pre-orders in Canada, at least, can't find anything. And I've looked. I look probably every couple days because I want one. I want one for Moby as well. We have a kind of like a
gentleman's
agreement. We're both going to help each other get this console.
Oh, really?
Yes, we do.
So the chance you can get, you're going to get two if you have the chance.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
If I
That's
can
smart.
get it, I'm buying two.
Yeah, totally.
100%.
That's smart.
And, I think that's disappointing. And then I also think about their virtual console. The Switch just came out, and there is no virtual console in sight.
What is this virtual console?
Okay, the virtual console is basically, it's an app that's been on every Nintendo console since the Wii. The Wii was the first one. Yeah. And you can download old games, pretty much from N64 previous.
Okay, so basically it's a backwards compatible app.
Yeah, but here's the problem that annoys me, is it's not backwards compatible throughout the systems. Meaning, you have to rebuy for the new system the old games.
So
I
if
think
you own
There's no data transfer.
No, if you own it on the Wii,
Yeah.
you have to rebuy it for the Wii U.
Now, I cheated
that
that with my Wii U. I cheated that because my Wii's disk drive died, and I figured out there was a way by using an SD card and having an internet connection with both systems on at the same time, I could create an imprint of my Wii, a digital imprint on my Wii U. So that's how I got the games over, but I have a problem now, which is that the classic controller, which is required to play a lot of those Wii games, does not connect to the Wii U.
Right, I remember
so
you
I had to
said
buy an adapter from China that's going to take 90 days to get here. Who knows if it works? Who knows if it
The very
arrives?
fact that you have to do this
Is wrong.
It's wrong. It's silly.
Okay, though. I think that's strong. That's strongly worded. Because you look at, like, the PS3, that the PS3 later iterations was not backwards compatible at all. So I think you're lucky you get the option for
Okay.
that. I had a library of over 200 games for PS2, and I buy a PS3 that I can't play those on anymore.
but you can still rebuy those games on PS3.
Not all of them.
Cody, I think you're giving Sony too much credit. I think you should be fucking pissed off at Sony.
Yeah, I am. That's why.
Okay.
That's why this is a positive for the Nintendo system, where you can even do that. That's the positive. And I get that. Yeah, the move to the next generation. That's a tough break. That's a hard hit. You can no longer enjoy these games that you've already purchased and have probably potentially purchased the second time. Like, this is the third time you purchased it.
You already bought it when you were younger.
Yeah,
you bought the nostalgia version, and now you need it again.
But you know what? With those types of games, they know the audience that they're catering to. They're catering to those people in their 40s who played those games when they were kids and who have, ideally, the funds to pay for it.
And they're still expensive. Their price points are pretty much on par with other new arcade games.
Really?
You're looking at probably $15 for
$15 for an N64
game.
Whoa.
Yeah.
But man, when you got to reload your whole collection.
I look at the Switch and I look at a console that you can play handheld. You can take on a plane with you, which I did, and it was phenomenally fun to play Zelda on a plane.
That's cool.
But how fun would it be to download Mario 64 and play it anywhere? I realize you can play a handheld version of it already on a Game Boy, but to do that...
Well, that's a whole nother console.
Exactly.
I mean, even though it's handheld, that's a console.
You could play it...
A device.
But to be able to download a whole history worth of games, I think that's what everyone was really excited for with the Switch, and we haven't got that yet. And with a console that has a very limited kind of game depth right now, the library is limited. It will be for a while until third parties jump on. The retro gaming is something everybody's really hankering for, and the SNES Classic's great, but if we can't get it, we sure as heck want to get those games on the Switch.
Yeah. So Do you think that is all plays into this the ploy? They make the demand for accessible retro gaming to boost sales on these classic consoles, the SNES Classic.
I think they're definitely related. I think waiting to release that virtual console is not going to happen until after the SNES Classic has run its limited course.
Yeah. But it's funny though, if that is the case, that they're shooting themselves in the foot with the limited runs of those classic consoles. It makes no sense to me. Boggles my mind. How they could not be selling another 3 million copies of these things, no problem.
It does. And Nintendo has made some very questionable decisions, in their history. And that could be 2 podcasts worth of stuff. You look at the Wii U generation, which they didn't support in first-party games much at all. And then the system crapped out, and they wondered why people weren't buying it. And it's like, geez, Nintendo, this is the Wii? The Wii U. Wii U.
Oh, but it just came out. Didn't it?
No, Leland.
Wait, what are we in? Oh, Wii U, then Switch.
Yes.
Okay.
So you're talking about a
completed
time does fly.
Case in point, right
you
there.
Forgot it even existed.
Wow.
Yeah. You thought it went Wii Switch.
I did have that lineage in my brain. Yeah, that's wow. Okay, case in point, man. Whew.
Yeah.
Argument closed.
It's bad.
Segment over.
It's bad.
Nintendo sucks.
Oh,
don't back Nintendo. I've been saying it for years.
The Wii U is a sore point. I'll admit that, a very sore point.
Yeah, I guess one blip in a record can't just tear down an entire company. That's very blatant of me to say Nintendo sucks, but I'll stand behind it because I said it.
You know what, Marty, where do you think the appeal for retro gaming in general comes from, though?
Oh, it's just nostalgia. I mean, there's so many good.
Yeah, I just said that 15 minutes ago. Thanks, Marty.
But a lot of the.
I was asking.
The games that we're talking about were genre definers, and they started these genres that we love, like the original Final Fantasies and Marios, and they were so good. They're some of the best games ever made, universally agreed upon, and especially the SNES Classic. I'm looking at the library, and I can't wait to play a whole bunch of these. Like Super Mario RPG is so fun. Just Super Mario, A Link to the Past. Like I've played these games many times, but they're all great games, and they all stand the test of time.
I think there's something to be said for in-person multiplayer, which I think has really dropped off the map, which, certainly N64 had, as a major selling component, having those 4 controller slots and doing split screen. And I think because of the hardware limitations, those games had to be pretty simple, like pick up and play and learn within a couple minutes. And I mean, certainly with the complicated AAA open world games we have now, I think we've lost that.
We definitely have. It's something I think we can regain with the Switch. There's that possibility if your friend has a Switch and you have a Switch, it's very easy to bring it over. It's very easy to connect your controller. There's a lot of options there. It's just a matter of will they make the games for it.
Do you have any appeal, either of you? Does retro gaming have any appeal for you over contemporary games that contemporary games simply cannot match? And I mean, we just discussed one, and simplicity, but is there anything else that you can think of?
I'm big on new games. I love AAA huge games. The Witcher 3 is probably my favorite game ever. I'm currently playing Persona 5. It doesn't feel next-gen-ish, but it's still a really huge, fun game. Obviously, it took a ton of development time. But I can definitely swing back into these old games. It doesn't feel like they lose a step. They're just different to me. But one does not need to exist without the other. I love them both.
Yeah, I think they can easily coexist. I mean, again, because back to the simplicity, you can easily boot one of them up and play it for half an hour. As opposed to The Witcher 3. I mean, I don't think we touched on this last episode, but you can't just pop into Witcher 3 for half an hour. You can't get anything done. No, it's not the type of game that they've created, and that's not the type of experience they've tried to craft for their audience, for the players that are going to play, pick up their
not
game.
At all.
Yeah.
I've talked to a lot of people who love Skyrim, and then they pick up The Witcher thinking it's Skyrim, and then they regret it because the systems and the gameplay and the world is so
different,
much to take in, and
very different.
To turn on
The Witcher 3 interface is like if you don't know what you're doing. When I first started the game, I was like, what is all this stuff? All the crafting screens and stuff. Like, it's a lot to take in.
I turned it back on for the expansions, and it hurt my brain.
You had to relearn it.
Yeah, I had to relearn.
But you know, like, once it's there, it's intuitive, right? I mean, like, it's like any great rule set for a board game. It can be complex, it can be intricate, but once you've been exposed to it, it's self-explanatory. Maybe not the best implementation of those mechanics is not always apparent, obviously, right? That's finding the strategy in a game, in a video game, in a board game. But a good interface and a good rule set it becomes second nature to you.
I suppose thinking about retro gaming, some of these nostalgic games we're talking about, they are simplicity itself. You talk about A Link to the Past. It's not a complicated game, but the rules are there. The gameplay has rules and it has systems, and they make sense. And there is a depth to it, like a complexity that takes time to unravel, but it's simple at first. And maybe it's different now. Maybe it's complex to start, and things have to be almost sometimes convoluted, and there's a lot going on in games, and a game needs to have multiplayer, it needs to be open world, it needs to have DLC. But it was nice when games just were games. You bought Zelda, it was done. There didn't need to be a multiplayer. You just had a single player 20 to 30 hour experience that stuck with you, and that's something that maybe is lost now that retro gaming is gaming has moved to the future.
Well, I think, it's similar that in movies sometimes, especially horror movies, they say, a good director can make you scared of what you can't see because your mind fills in the blanks.
Yeah.
Certainly I can think of some retro games that have poor graphics where my mind kind of has to fill in some of the blanks of what's happening. I think to a PC game that I played consistently through my life when I first laid my hands on it, and I think 1999, which is Star Wars Rebellion. Not a very well-known game, but in my opinion, one of the best Star Wars big world, galaxy-wide kind of 4X strategy games, but it has absolutely terrible graphics that are virtually 2D. And my mind has to fill in what's happening. When you send your character on a mission, it's just a little rectangle with like Han Solo's face on it. And you pair him up with like maybe a Luke Skywalker face and send him to a planet. It sounds completely boring when you say it, but the mechanics are sound, and the sound itself is actually one of the good parts of the game. But you kind of fill in. You kind of fill in what's missing there. I'll throw out another quick example. Turok, the Dinosaur Hunter for N64. Yeah. Very popular game, but an unintended challenge is the terrible draw distance. That fog, if you've ever seen screenshots, is right in your face. And it's disorientating. It makes the game more challenging than it would be. To some people, it's a major turnoff they can't get over. But to me, it's an interesting challenge that you would never see in a new game.
I can't say I've ever thought of terrible graphics as an interesting challenge.
Right? So your challenge is playing as a blind person?
That is such a cynical way of seeing it, Leland. I think our listener can
You're
understand.
so good at games that you need to have a handicap against you.
Yeah, wow.
Well, you guys know I play an extra easy double beginner, so whenever I can.
There's going to be a discussion about that.
Yeah, right.
You will be put on trial.
Segue, I think.
Heads will roll!
Does anybody else have any final thoughts on retro gaming before we move on?
Sorry, go ahead, Marty.
No, just jump over me. Just do whatever.
Yeah, that's what I try to do, right?
Just jump on me like Mario.
I'm tapped
like Mario.
So you two figure it out. I'm tapped out.
I think that's kind of summing up how we all feel about it. Like we said, Leland doesn't have as much experience with games from those generations.
No, my video game experience started with PS1.
Yeah.
So anything prior to that, very, very limited.
But you could argue that retro gaming kind of includes that. I'd say it includes that generation at this point.
Yeah, see, that's what I was going to bring up is like...
the remakes.
To me, retro gaming is like, I could call back to... 6th generation of consoles as being retro.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I could easily make that argument for myself.
All the HD remakes that have come out.
Oh yeah, those things make money, man. Like, how many times have they redone Shadow of the Colossus?
Oh yeah.
Holy hell, they must have made a killing off of that game.
Yeah.
Phenomenal game. Great, even when it came out. And I bought the HD remake for PS3. And I didn't pick it up for PS4, which I think there's an iteration.
It's
for that.
coming out. I think
it's coming out.
I don't think
a
it's
collection. A collection. Like for PS3, I got the Eco, whatever the hell you said, and Shadow Colossus collection. I played both of them. Shadow Colossus was just as beautiful as it was when it first came out. Still impactful.
Yes,
great.
I believe they're fully remaking it. Shadow Colossus. Cool. It's going to be the same game, but I believe,
oh yes, I saw that.
But
that was
it's not a remaster; it's a remake.
Yeah. Yes, I saw a video on that.
And I think they're going to go and try to give it like 60 frames per second and that sort of thing.
That's cool.
I think so. I'll probably touch it again.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm tapped out on it now at this point, but I've just played that game so much.
But I mean, that's
those Colossus are second nature. But man, could they do extra Colossi as DLC? Would that be cool or no?
I think that
depending on price point.
Doesn't that kind of harm its legacy?
It does change the narrative of the entire game.
Apparently, there was a lot on the cutting room floor. And
really?
They had like 30 or 40. Yeah. And they said, you know what, this is too much. It's too samey, as you like to say.
30 or 40.
And it was just too much.
Okay, well then that means that they were poorly designed. If the gameplay fighting each of those 20 extra ones were samey, then they were poorly designed. Then they should.
I think you have a point. I think that's what made it nice was that they were all kind of different.
Yeah, that's cool. They're basically they boil down to being a living puzzle that you interact with.
Yeah,
it's cool.
That's entirely what.
And then you get to you solve that puzzle by stabbing it in the head a couple times. Bada bing, bada boom, you're there. I think that would be interesting DLC. And again, depending on price point, I could be persuaded.
It could be. I think if you're going to do it, you should just include it in the package. You're going to re-release this game.
Yeah,
release it with some extra stuff.
Well, but the re-release is going to be full retail price.
Oh, yeah,
you're going to be playing $69.99 for
the Bioshock collection. It's $79.
Yeah, but you get 3 games.
That's true.
And I would not mind picking that up.
Yeah.
But oh my god! That was.
But are you going to argue that? Like, I don't know if that would constitute retro gaming.
I know. Yeah. Totally. Again, that's like. I can include that, but really, that's stretching it. I can admit that.
To me, retro gaming is the N64 and older
and back. Yeah, that makes sense. I agree with
3 generations ago.
Yeah, that was my rule.
You
I was going to bring up
definition.
three generations back. I think is an excellent rule.
Because that amounts to like 20, 25 years, right? Ago.
Well,
about 20.
About
20 started.
So that's what's the age before they decide something is classic, like music, like classic rock. That's like 20, 30 years, right? Before it's classic.
That's interesting.
Isn't it 20 years?
Gotta be about 20 or 30.
Yeah, something like that. Somewhere in that range.
You'd probably argue that a lot of like 20, like music from the 80s now is like considered
it's classic. Yes, it is. It falls under the classic. Even some early 90s stuff.
They wouldn't be called classic.
Bittersweet
rock.
Symphony.
Classic.
But they're not really. They're not in the genre of classic rock.
No,
they are classics.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Totally. So, but that, and I know this is a tangent. What are we talking about music for? But like that is they use that to determine who gets into the Music Hall of Fame. Right? They only put in classic stuff in the Hall of Fame, do they not?
You have to be. I think it's 25 years since.
Yeah. So okay, that's what I was thinking of. I think.
So I think 20 years for gaming makes sense. Gaming's a newer thing than music.
I think so.
20 years
because 20 years in technological advancements is a lot.
It's enormous. Yeah. I mean
maybe not so much. Maybe not taking from this point and in 2037, maybe not so much. But from this point, 20 years back, huge.
I think from this point, 2037 will be huge.
I guess, because you're moving into VR and everything's going to be
3D, VR, all these things.
That's true.
And they're things that we, thought of as kind of gimmicky, but they're stepping into a realm where they're a distinct possibility of everyone having eventually.
Yeah.
I mean, they're out of my price point right now. I don't want to drop that much money on to play Resident Evil 7 in virtual reality.
Yeah, you can't drop $500 on a fucking Oculus Rift.
No.
And then try to get a machine that can run it.
That's the other thing. Yeah. Well, I think that kind of wraps up the retro gaming.
Yeah, that was a great discussion. I like that.
All right. So moving on, I thought the next one we should dive into would be the Crazy for Cardboard.
Yeah,
segment.
I like that. Okay. So, listener, welcome to Crazy for Cardboard. Again, like we touched on at the beginning, I just wanted to see do's and don'ts for teaching. And so I kind of framed this to be like, obviously your opinion is going to be a direct criticism upon myself, which I wanted. I want to be adequate at teaching. I want to be more than adequate at teaching. I want to be able to express a game's mechanics and maybe touch on strategies, which is something we'll discuss, but I want to be good at it because I want it to be accessible and easily accessible to the people I play with, and because that's how you grow this hobby, and I think this hobby is worth growing.
I want to know you as Professor Leland.
Okay, Professor Leland, I like it. I could put on my glasses that I don't really wear when I should be. Okay, so I think one real easy first question for you guys is, are you guys visual or auditory learners? Like, when I give you an example, is it more beneficial to see me physically enacting that example, which in the board game context would be, moving components around, playing cards, etc., seeing the fallout of those? Or is it enough to show you those components, like to have your potentially player board in front of you and to be able to look down and not necessarily see it acted out, but explained proficiently, and is that adequate? What do you guys think? Moby, let's start with you.
I actually am more of an auditory learner when it comes to board games.
Okay.
I can just kind of sit there and absorb what you're saying. It's only when it comes to kind of abstract rules. One of them that comes up was Scythe's board for upgrades, where certain squares are being blocked off with colored blocks because you've researched that, which then limits the amount of resources you need. But, everybody's text screen or board or whatever you want to call it is different for all the different factions.
Yeah.
That I kind of had to see visually because that was literally a visual thing. And I had to learn that this is what happens there.
Yes, that's very difficult to describe to somebody without context.
But, I think of other games that we played, like, was it Rescue from Atlantis? Escape from Atlantis?
Escape from Atlantis.
That was easy enough to...
Yeah, well, that's a light game, my friend. That's that's nowhere near the level of...
Some of the social games, like,
of Scythe.
Fiasco, which, a little hint, at some point we're going to do a live Fiasco game.
Definitely.
But that was easy enough to be taught.
Okay. And again, that is very unique.
Okay.
As far as board gaming go. But I get what you're saying.
What I'm getting at is abstract concepts.
Okay, are difficult to grasp.
And anything else is auditory.
Okay.
As far as I'm concerned. Marty?
I definitely feel like I'm a visual learner when it comes to the board gaming world. 100% of the time when we're doing anything that's remotely complicated, if I see it played out, if I see a round played out, I almost immediately grasp it.
Yeah.
I love doing a rough playthrough. It's tough on a long game.
Yeah.
That's the tough one. But I like doing almost like a guided, a
little first round, and then you reset and you go back. Yeah.
And that always helps me because I find that the toughest part I have is learning the not so much the rules, but the stratagem. So I learn the rules quick enough, but I don't really understand why
you're doing things.
And that's something you pick up from seeing it being played.
That's true.
And I definitely learn better that way.
Okay, so that's a good segue into my next question, is just how much of the stratagem, as you say, would you like explained? Like, I mean, I know you guys can attest, when we play games, especially new ones, I am very liberal about pointing out optimal moves, and maybe to a detriment. I'm just usually concerned that an inferior move, like something that's blatantly like you should not be doing that, it comes from a lack of knowledge. If I've faltered on teaching a rule properly, that's always my biggest fear. So I'm always trying to be very helpful, and I don't know if it comes off as being overbearing or you're just like, Leland, shut the fuck up and let me figure this out.
I definitely see that when we're playing. I think it helps. I noticed that during Shogun. It's like, hey, don't put that many guys there because this could happen, and it's something I didn't think about because I had only played it for 20 minutes.
Totally.
So that's definitely a big part of it. I think it's definitely big in the complicated games.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you basically are with board games is a living moderator that in the video game world is like the tutorial. Like, hey, maybe you don't want to move all those units into Germany on turn 1 or something like that. You're the kind of guy... And honestly, not everyone's like that. So this is one of the rare cases, listener, where I'll give Leland a compliment and say that he is better than me, and that he will, to his detriment in these games, point out optimal moves. And not everyone can have the humility to do that. I, like Marty does, I find it useful.
Okay.
What is interesting is the games where you've left me alone and the interesting, sometimes game-breaking strategies that come up. You know what I'm going to say.
Yes, I know you're going to talk about viticulture.
Viticulture.
That we played one time, listener.
But we played one time, but the issue is that I won by essentially showing how the mechanics of the game were broken. It's a game about creating and stocking wine. However, I found that the quickest, easiest way to beat the game, beat Leland, was to basically do all these peripheral things, such as improve the winery, definitely improve tourism, but there was no wine there. You have all these cellars that's supposed to be filled with wine. I did not make a single bottle of wine, and I won the game. Now, not every game is like that.
I don't know how he did that, listener. I do not know how he did that. I don't know what I screwed up, but I had to have screwed something up. We will revisit that game, maybe playing with more than just 2 players.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yes.
One playthrough, I can't comment.
I'd be interested to see this.
I'm sure I'd fuck something up.
Well,
but maybe not. Hey, but maybe not. Maybe you were... But that may not necessarily be your brokenness. That could very well have be a case of my inability to respond properly to it.
Okay.
Maybe.
Another problem I see with board games is, as we've discussed in the previous episode, as they get more complicated with the mechanics, it gets harder for you as the guy that's bought the game and trying to teach it without actually doing it. Now, a famous example for us is Twilight Struggle. We love that game, but oh my goodness, the first time we played it together did we screw up so many rules.
Oh yeah, definitely. And the rules overhead, it's the rules aren't complicated. It's the interaction just with the base mechanic of card play that is in.
Yes.
I'm sure listener, you may be well familiar with Twilight Struggle, but one player plays the USSR, one player plays the United States of America during the Cold War, vying for influence. Over a series of rounds, you were playing cards from your hand that depict events that happened throughout the Cold War that can plus or minus influence in certain countries, and you swing it all into victory points. And a lot of the cards, they're nice, and when you play them, but a lot of them leave a certain ambiguity on the fulfillment of that action. And I know you're probably heading into the online version.
Yeah.
That solves those problems because the game runs the game for you.
Exactly.
And it doesn't let you play those cards incorrectly because it's an AI. It's showing you what you do and what you can't do within its parameters of the video game coding. So.
Sure, but like to my original point when you asked me, am I more an auditory or visual learner? You're right. The online version of Twilight Struggle, which I play every week, it will not allow me to perform bad moves, but unfortunately, it's not a good tutorial. And there are mechanics in that, in particularly coup, not just when you cannot coup, but how the mechanic of the coup actually works, and especially realignment rules in that game.
Yes.
I have no clue what I'm doing with realignment. No clue.
Totally, because the game's interface, it assumes that you already know what is happening, and it skips forward over these visual steps that you would be taking with the physical copy.
Yes.
Yeah, I get that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so one last thing, I think. I wanted to see if sometimes when I'm teaching games that I take for granted the amount of knowledge that I have. And by knowledge, I mean I got 100 plus games that I could probably pretty easily rattle off the majority of the rule sets for, spin around in my brain. Do I take for granted the impact that knowledge plays on being able to learn a new game? Because inevitably there's overlapping mechanics that I see something written down in a rule book, and I'm like, oh, I've seen this before. I know exactly how that works. Do I sometimes take that for granted in my explanations of the operation of some mechanics? Like, I don't fully flesh them out like I should?
I think that's just typical of anyone who's experienced in anything.
Yeah.
It's something that comes up whenever I try to teach my wife a video game, because for us it's like we know that the right trigger is going to be shoot in a
Totally. Yeah, right.
and you know the right stick's going to move, the right stick's going to look, left stick's going to move. Like you know that and you know that WASD is going to move you on a keyboard.
Yeah.
Because you played games. But someone who's not as knowledgeable about games might not automatically jump to those buttons. And I feel it's the same way with a board game. You might know that like obviously this is how we score points, or this is in this type of game.
Yeah.
But I don't think you're right. I don't think that everyone who doesn't play those games often realizes, because I definitely don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, from my point of view, you personally, I don't think you miss the basic rules. What happens is you completely by accident, I think, miss some of the more subtle rules.
Oh, yeah.
Subtle mechanics.
Definitely.
And that's why I think there's benefits, as Marty said, of actually playing these games, because then you go, oh yeah, I should have told you. Oh yeah, I should have told you.
Yeah, well, that's the worst thing. I desperately try to avoid that bullshit. Halfway through a game, like, oh, sorry, you can't do that because I forgot to tell you. That is the worst. The worst.
We had that happen during Shogun.
Yeah.
Something happened, and it was...
Really?
Yeah, it was like, oh, we'd already done that, so we're like, okay, we'll just do it for the rest of the game.
I remember.
What was it?
It was something to do with rice or something.
I know the one thing that we played wrong, I think with both of you, is the removal of revolt tokens from the board.
I think that was part of it.
Yeah.
And lifeboats, too. We played lifeboats, and we ended up playing an extra round just because it was...
Oh, yeah. But that was... And I knew that we were playing an extra round, but that was me... Again, I got into the situation where it was beneficial in the game, points-wise, for me to say, no, this is how the rule is when it... And I don't think it was... I explained it poorly. I was kind of just going off the graphic design of the board and the way it looked, and assumed it was obvious to me, the amount of steps it takes to get the boat to the shores to save your guys. So when the other person we were playing with, it was not beneficial for her for us to have to move, for not have to move that boat an extra round, right? So yeah, that was poor. That was bad. That
was just an oversight.
Sure, and it wasn't game breaking.
No,
it didn't really make the game go that much longer.
No, it's still fun.
Maybe it was a little long for that game, but yeah, no, that's a great example. Yeah. Okay, great. Right. That's awesome. So, bottom line, I'm an awesome teacher, and I don't have to work on anything.
In conclusion, yeah, you are great.
Oh, sorry. There was one last thing. I want to touch on theme very, very quickly. I think it was episode 0 when we were talking about Raxon, and Marty, you said the theme definitely is a factor in what draws you to a game and brings you in. So, does the theming, like, let's take Raxon for an example. You guys all know the history of it. You know it's theme based. The whole marketing machine behind it is theme based. When you're playing that game and I'm using terminology that reference, like, every game has their own terminology and it's thematic to that game. If I'm using that terminology to explain, does that help or hinder your understanding? Marty.
It's hard. I guess it's it's contextual. Like, it's really hard to say. Most of the time, it probably helps. It helps to be immersed in it.
Yeah, okay.
But as long as you know what's being said, if you're immersed in that world and you're kind of getting into that vibe, it makes sense. It helps.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I can't really think of any specific examples where theme has really tripped me up.
Okay, I'll give you an example.
Sure.
How about Android Netrunner?
Oh, yes.
That's a very, very good example of an asymmetrical 2-player game. For those not familiar, for listener, if you're not familiar with Android, it's a living card game put out by Fantasy Flight Games. Great game. Maybe not the current state, but that's a whole other tangent we could talk about later. But both sides asymmetrical play, so they're all different descriptors describing the same thing. Each person's deck is called something different. Their hand is a different name, and their discard pile is a different name.
Yeah, it was confusing for me, Leland, and I think that goes back to you and me having had a previous decade of Magic the Gathering being our only collectible card game that we played. So when suddenly my deck is no longer a deck,
it's a stack, it's an R&D.
It's a stack or an R&D, and my graveyard isn't what it was.
Yeah.
You know, subconsciously, those names, those themes, because Magic the Gathering, it's still a theme to have a graveyard be your discard pile.
Yeah.
Those just got really imprinted, and it was really hard to get over that with Netrunner.
Yeah, so that's a big like stumbling block on learning that game for some people. But I think though, like, they're very thematic. When you look at the game, one player plays the runner who is just a hacker trying to get into the corporation's files and find their nefarious agendas. When you're running on their research and development, you're finding their tools, you're finding their goodies. That makes sense, right?
Well, don't combine like my thoughts on how difficult a theme was to learn with not liking theme. I love Netrunner's
No,
theme.
I'm not. Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah. Oh no, I love thematics. I just find the mechanics of thematics a little hard to learn sometimes.
Yeah, no, that's right. Okay, I like it. Okay, well that wraps up this segment. That's kind of all I had to think of. Again, I'm great at teaching, and I don't need to change a damn thing.
I'm glad we came to that conclusion. I'm very glad it took you 20 minutes to stroke your ego.
I have been patting myself in the back for the last 40 minutes right here, okay?
His back is red from patting.
So to wrap up this episode, we're going to discuss Spider-Man Homecoming. Not so much a review of the movie, but we could review it a little bit. But
not so much as a review as in I don't think we're going to give a rating.
No.
Right? Like with Dunkirk, we didn't give ratings. We just gave our general impressions.
No, but maybe I will give it a rating.
Okay. Yeah. But then we got to make a whole rating system that we haven't talked about. Now you're throwing both of us for a loop here.
I'll give it 7 apples out of 20 bananas.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's a good one actually. I like apples and bananas. I'm going to throw it to Moby to get us started on this. Spider-Man Homecoming. What did you think?
Yeah, I'm an interesting guy when it comes to superhero movies, with the exception of Watchmen, which I only read after seeing the film. I'm not a comic reader at all. These other two guys in the past, listener, have been comic book readers. So my standards are somewhat lower, especially on continuity. What I really liked about Spider-Man Homecoming is that it continued this theme of every Marvel property, and I know Marvel just has a partnership for Spider-Man, but each Marvel film now kind of fits into its own genre of movie. You've got Captain America being this political war type thrillers, and you get with Spider-Man this kind of 80s Howard Hughes teen drama, Breakfast Club / Ferris Bueller's Day Off thing going on, and I liked how they went for that vibe. I'm interested if they can carry that vibe forward. At some point, Peter Parker is going to have to graduate or move on to bigger and better things. But it worked for this film. I think my favorite part of this film, and we've talked about this outside of the podcast, I love Michael Keaton. I love that they brought superhero royalty into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And that's how I see Michael Keaton. Superhero movies were pretty goofy before and even after him. And he brought some real credibility in 1989 Batman. And, I thought it was inspired to bring him into the modern superhero movies as a villain. And I think he was fantastic.
He was amazing. He made that movie what it is.
Absolutely.
He made that movie.
We talk about it, and so I know I'm repeating things that the other guys know, but that scene when Michael Keaton is in the car on the way to prom with Peter and his date, who's his daughter, which was hilarious in itself. And as Leland told me as soon as we got out of that theater, you see it in his eyes. You see him perk up and raise eyebrows, and he's doing all his acting without speaking. And you see him put together the puzzle
in his brain.
That Peter is Spider-Man.
You see it play on his face.
And then just that, it's almost out of camera, but he has a pistol in his right hand, and he leans over to the passenger seat to talk to Peter and give him the...
And menaces him.
And menaces him with the world's most hardcore dad talk, I think, in cinematic history.
It was definitely probably the best scene.
Oh, that was so good.
It was great. Michael Keaton's great in it. I think when you think of any Spider-Man film, maybe superhero film in general, the best ones have the best villains.
Oh yeah,
yes,
man.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah. That's the. Sorry to interrupt.
You could probably argue the best Spider-Man film was Spider-Man 2.
Yes, it was. I will get to that. Yes, absolutely.
And Dr. Octopus is amazing.
Yes, he's amazing in it. Yep.
This movie as well, it had a very good villain. It made up for some of the shortcomings for sure. What do you think, Leland?
Well, I enjoyed it. I would say that it is an above average movie, which these guys may, fill you in on that.
Leland's laughing because if he gives a movie a B, you can expect it to win 13 Oscars.
Well, and particularly the slew of superhero films, I'm a little hypercritical of, I suppose. I don't really know why. I don't know. These characters are close to me. I feel that they're close to me. I don't know. When I see something portrayed in an ineffective or inaccurate way, it gets me. It gets my goat. But no, I liked Homecoming. Definitely. Again, like I said, Michael Keaton made this movie. He's so good, and they were so smart to the role that they used him. Because they know there's no way they can put Green Goblin back in like that. That's not a good move. So they made Vulture fill the Green Goblin role. So smart. Did not see that coming. So smart. And Keaton is perfectly cast to fill that role. It's amazing. The only downside of that is that the interactions between Spidey and Vulture, the fights, I don't see. You can't have an actual fight. I mean, that was one of the biggest criticisms of this movie for me, is that there was no fight scene. It was Peter webbing up dudes and then being towed by Vulture and his cool ass wings, right? Even the culmination when he's on the airplane, that was not a fight.
No.
That was him hanging on for dear life trying to survive. Like, it wasn't him fighting. It wasn't him really being acrobatic. It wasn't him throwing punches. It wasn't, like, even in The Amazing Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield, when he fought the lizard in the school, that was a great fight scene because he's flipping all over. Lizard is this huge hulking mass, and you see Spidey's agility, and he's webbing him up as he's literally crawling around Lizard, and like that's a good fight, and I want to see that, and even further back to Spider-Man 2, the best Spider-Man movie from these last three reboots for sure. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, amazing. Every fight with Doc Ock was crazy. Doc Ock, he's got 4 arms swinging back, and Spidey's dodging them, and like, oh man, it's so good. Those fight scenes were so good, and that's what Homecoming lacked for sure.
I have to agree with you on that. Homecoming felt, and maybe it was intended, that Peter Parker did not feel like a hero yet. He felt like a teenager playing hero, and he felt like he was trying to do it. Maybe by the end he was doing heroic things, but he wasn't a combat-ready hero.
That's a great point.
He was still a 15-year-old kid.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I think that is the tone that they were trying to go for sure. Because this is not a superhero movie. It's like you said, this is a teen drama movie. Like nobody in this movie is heroic. Nothing Spidey did felt particularly heroic. Yes, he is saving people's lives, but so when I first saw the very first trailer for this, when he has the fairy that's been cut in two by Vulture's crazy beam weapon, and he's holding it and he's webbing it up, I expected to get the rush of feeling that I got from Spider-Man 2 when Spidey and that Maguire is stopping that runaway subway, and he's on the front of it and he's got the webs going, he's holding these webs, and his suit's ripping because his muscles are so flexed, and he finally stops it. It halfway comes off the end of this. It's stopping it from crashing into the water and killing everybody. And he falls forward, and the citizens fucking catch him, and they pull him in, and they put him above him. And I'm like getting shakes even. I love that scene, and that's what I wanted from that fairy scene. And I did not even get any close, because it was cool. He zipped around, he webbed up, but the very hold, it was a second hold. Like, it was not the strenuous.
He failed.
He straight up failed right away.
And Iron Man has to save his butt.
Yes, and again,
I think that's the theme of it.
That is what they were going for, yes.
You know?
But that's not what I wanted, and because I had those expectations, I was disappointed by that.
So maybe in the second film you're going to get that.
Maybe.
And
I hope so.
it's going to feel so
because
good.
you know what? It took Raimi, Spider-Man 2, the sequel, to get those feelings, because I did not get those feelings from the first Spider-Man.
No.
Well, it's such a small scale in regards to how much danger or lack of danger you felt in that Spider-Man.
And I like that.
Yeah, it was cool.
Again,
but, I mean, he's just fighting a couple bank robbers and,
Yeah.
gun runners and things like that. But, you come off Guardians of the Galaxy, with these spaceship riding guys, fighting giant mutants and stuff. And you go to Spider-Man. Don't get me wrong, it was fun to watch, but there was a lack of danger. I always knew Iron Man was going to save Spidey. I was pretty sure Vulture wasn't going to die. Yeah. And it just felt small scale, and that's okay, but I don't know. Just the stakes were so low.
So Avengers 3 is going to wrap up Marvel's Phase 3 when they have Avengers 3 Part 2.
Yeah.
The Phase 4 is going to start actually with Spider-Man Homecoming 2. And they said they wanted to do that because they wanted to humanize the Marvel world and universe again after this big galactic...
They want to blow it up and bring it right back.
Kind of similar to like comics, how they have these cataclysmic events.
Yeah, they reset, they reboot, etc. Whatever word you want to use.
Spider-Man is the perfect way to do that, and I agree. I think that's. But is that setting us up for a Spider-Man Homecoming 2 with the same issues,
the same themes, the same tone, the same overall, whatever they wanted to say overall, the same thing. Yeah, that's
maybe he's going to have a very human, limited sort of battle again against a villain that's not, world shattering, but maybe he will be heroic in this.
Well, that's fine. None of his rogue Spidey's rogues are not world shattering, defining power.
Villains.
Exactly. Yeah. So that is what he's supposed to be, and I get that, and that's fine. And you know what? So that ties in with another reason it was disappointing for me is because the only way to get this movie, the way it is portrayed, is to have the money machine of Marvel before it. This is a Marvel movie. This is a direct result of the Marvel movies before it. There's no doubt about that. So you could not get a Spider-Man with these themes and tones, I don't think, without that beforehand knowledge.
No, it's very difficult to make a superhero film that's going to make enough money unless it's this big thing, this event, unless you have this stuff leading into it. And you do. You have a big Marvel machine leading into this film, and people are going to see it because Iron Man's in it.
Yeah. And then that, again, to finish that point I was trying to make, is that is disappointing in his Rogues Gallery. Their portrayal... You are directly comparing them to the likes of Ultron, even though Ultron kind of sucked, as far as he could destroy the world because he's potentially has the power to do that.
Yeah.
So I think that is also where I was disappointed, is even the portrayal of Vulture was awesome and great. Keaton's great. I mean, we keep saying it. Keaton's great.
But he's still Vulture.
He's still the Vulture. Exactly. He's still your middle class guy. But I think I really liked the character of Vulture because he operates in the gray. He's not completely evil. He is doing all this nefarious stuff to support his family, and that's as a direct result of the impact of the Avengers and the initiatives that they put in to try to fix their, quote unquote, mistakes that they do, or the blunders and the destruction they cause. He was forced into it. I mean, it's it's still illegal activities, and he does murder fuck a dude. I mean, I guess by accident, but I wasn't convinced that was by accident. But you still then portray him as the family man, the great guy. He's doing what he needs to do.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. So often in these movies, I mean, what is it? It's some demigod or android or something that's chasing down some gem or thing like that. I mean, that's cool from a fantasy perspective, but you can't identify with that. But we're middle class guys. You can identify with the guy who's just trying to clean up, do a job, keep his boys employed, keep them coming to work on time, and he gets his contract pulled out from under him. And you know what? It gives you a relation to a villain that, we really haven't seen in these films so far.
Kind of, it's a little bit outside of what we normally talk about, but you think about something like Dragon Ball Z and an anime that's the enemies just keep getting bigger and more muscular and more powerful, and nothing really changes. It's just everyone just keeps getting stronger, and the human element disappears a little bit.
Yes, exactly.
And that doesn't work on a big movie after a while, because you can't risk it. You can't spend $250 million on a movie and have it flop.
Yeah,
and
right.
they're going to risk it if they don't pull it back, and I think they're smart by pulling it back after the Avengers 3 and 4.
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole other topic, and it's one I think we should do on a speculative segment on where we think Marvel might go with Avengers.
Like Phase 4?
Yeah, Phase 4, and where they're going to go with the Infinity War as well.
who's
Like,
gonna
who
be the
may
lineup?
die,
Oh, okay.
who may make it.
Yeah.
What's this landscape going to look like once those 2 films are complete?
And is it going to be as impactful as the first 3 phases? Like,
Well, I think I mean, we don't want to dive too deep into it, but I think from a marketing perspective that it's a home run. I mean, you are going to get, my parents, they only watch Guardians of the Galaxy. They only go to theaters for that. But they're going to go to Infinity War because they'll know Guardians of the Galaxies are in it. Yeah. I mean, you're going to have every single fan of any of these characters going, and it's going to be an event. It's like in the 1960s, Hollywood used to do this all the time. Lawrence of Arabia, Spartacus, Ben-Hur, huge event movies. And this is the modern day evolution of that.
It's also going to show your parents all these other characters that
they
might like.
Right.
Exactly.
Just to kill them off and have no more movies with them.
Story for the other day.
I think I could spend a whole time talking about the Infinity movies for sure. I would love to dive into the comic story and stuff. That's cool.
Another thing we want to talk about with Spider-Man was Holland. Was he a good Peter Parker?
I think he was. Was he
the best Peter Parker?
I think he was. Well, okay. I think Garfield was a good Peter Parker. Particularly the first half of The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Gasp! I know I said it. A good thing about that movie. But like the first half, I rewatched it recently.
Why?
I don't know why. I thought, I gotta do it again. I gotta try. And the first half, he's I think it's a great Peter Parker. Okay. I just like him. I don't know.
He was likable in the films.
Yeah.
He's not the problem.
He's not the problem with those movies. No. No, I liked Holland. I definitely think the weakest of the 3 is for sure Tobey Maguire.
Yeah.
But at the time, I think he did a fantastic job in the first 2 Spider-Mans.
That's, again, probably not his fault in Spider-Man 3. That's another can of
And you know what? I actually enjoy Spider-Man 3. I think it's a much better movie than The Amazing Spider-Man 2. That's for sure.
I agree. And
again, I know we're not talking about Spider-Man, the Sam Raimi Spider-Mans, but in Spider-Man 3, the end when Harry comes back to help him and saves him again. I got that rush of this is awesome. Like,
that was cool.
I did not get that rush at all during Homecoming, and I was disappointed in that. I was expecting my face to flush up and tears start to almost come out of my eyes, but it didn't happen.
Let's talk about the best part of Homecoming, which was the cameos by Captain America. We were sitting in the theater, and we didn't know what the post-credit scene would be.
Post.
The post. And I made a joke to Leland that if it had another Captain America PSA, it would be the best film of all time. And
it did.
I guess it is the best film of all time, apparently. Hilarious. That was
so well
probably
done.
My favorite part.
Yeah.
A lot of the comedy really landed in the film.
Although you said...
It took me about 10 minutes to really get into it. I think at first it just felt awkward to me, and then I started kind of getting into that mood, I guess, and then I liked it.
It was very interesting, kind of the minor roles they did in that movie. You had Captain America doing these PSAs, and they were great. They were hilarious. But if you don't know, the trivia behind that is they had very little time with Chris Evans, and they basically had him read the stuff off a teleprompter. And so when he says in the post credits, how many more of these things are there? That's actually Chris Evans going like, what's up here? They were great. They were fantastic. And I'm glad that for the Blu-ray release, we get a bunch of other ones that were left on the cutting room floor. Yeah. I think, I'm posing this right now, I'd like to watch it with you two guys live.
I'd love to.
Not later, and just laugh our butts off. But I do want to throw a little bone out here. Okay, that's going to sound creepy for where I'm going with this. I want to throw a little bit of appreciation out there for Zendaya, for her role. Originally, she was speculated to be a Mary Jane, a new Mary Jane. She's not. If you saw the little reference at the end where she said, "My friends call me MJ," I looked that up. That doesn't mean she's Mary Jane. That was just a little.
Her name is
joke.
Michelle.
Her name is Michelle. Yeah. I thought it was fun to have a young millennial as just a figure in the movie to poke fun at millennials, light protesting.
Yeah, no, I like this too.
Protesting.
This is very much a 2017 movie.
Yes,
holy
absolutely.
crap! Even the depiction of Flash Thompson. Not your jock, not your over steroided jock pushing Peter around. No, it's not. It's not physical bullying. It's mental and emotional bullying. I think that,
which is funny because I think we missed that generation by about a year. I think.
Yes, that's
when we think of bullies, we think of getting beat up, and nowadays it's not quite the same. And,
no, it's totally different.
Now you're a Trump supporter,
and see that, and then that was another thing that also didn't land for me. I didn't see Thompson as being any form of superior to Parker, because Parker in every aspect outshines him. They're both on the science decathlon team or whatever it's called. Parker's a genius. He's practically a boy genius. So he outshines Flash there. He routinely removes himself from the team, is welcomed back on by the teacher, and overtakes Flash's position. He gets benched. It didn't land for me. It was just like Flash. He wasn't the bully. He was just like overcompensating for his. I guess that is a bully. He's overcompensating for his own insecurities, and I guess that boils down to why bullies become bullies.
I suppose Spider-Man always beats the bullies. So if you think about like the other films, the comics, even when he becomes stronger, he beats them physically. But in this film, he just beat them mentally.
That's a great point. I did not pick on that. That's a great point.
Actually, that's a good point. But I agree where Leland's going with this. I would add that to me, a bully has to have a sense of intimidation. And, okay, maybe there's a way that you can make it happen mentally or whatnot, but I just feel Flash just did not have that. Period. Like physical
there was
or
no
mental.
No,
he was not intimidating.
Right.
He was just a rival. You know what crossed my mind?
He's barely a rival, honestly.
You know what crossed my mind when I was watching the film and he got introduced as the bully? The early Pokemon Red and Blue. Who picks Charmander, who picks Bulbasaur. That kind of rival where he's kind of laughable. You school him like 5 times throughout the game or the movie. You're never really scared of the guy. He's got weird hair, and in this case, his dad's flashy car or something like that.
Yeah.
It came off to me as that kind of rival versus a bully.
Yeah, he just became comedic relief.
No, but honestly, though, I agree with your sentiments there, but he wasn't even a rival. At no point was he rival. Even for Liz Allen's affection, Parker hands down won, and he was just being Peter. Like, in no way was he a rival. And they portrayed Flash chasing Liz, right? Kind of.
I think so.
Right?
A little bit.
And again, I don't think he wasn't even a rival.
I think that's kind of a nice statement on bullying. Like, the bully's not winning at all.
Yeah,
he's a loser.
Good. Yeah, a good point.
That's good. And honestly, Thompson's, I guess, a minor role. I don't know. I don't give a shit about his casting. That
it doesn't have
Indian.
to be.
I don't care. Or that Liz Allen was African American or I'm not sure what the actress's name, but I don't give a shit about that. I don't care that Zendaya is quote-unquote MJ. Who cares? I don't give a shit about that. I just want the characters to be cool. And then my problem with Zendaya's character as Michelle MJ, that I don't see the connection of her and Peter being an item. That was my biggest thing. I don't
bring
see
that up.
Yeah, I just don't see that, and that was my criticism of her being portrayed in that way. So I don't know.
There is zero chemistry between those two on any level.
And because she has zero chemistry with any character in that, because of the way that her character is written.
Exactly.
That's the point. She's an outsider. She's the odd one. She's a loner. Exactly.
She doesn't have friends. She doesn't even want.
I don't understand. So unless they write her character as having like some crazy epiphany, I don't see it. It's like she's gonna have to do a complete 180.
But does she have to be an item with Peter?
No, that's the thing. She doesn't. Again, so I was depending on how they're gonna portray that relationship. Who knows?
Like, is he gonna have like a Sly Cooper style like group of helpers? Like he's got his like tech helper and
that would be awesome.
Yeah, maybe they're going that way.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I've heard some criticisms about Aunt May's portrayal, like her youth.
Oh, don't get me started on that. I'm not offended with her youth. I think that this is the conspiracy theorist in me talking, and I've told you guys this before.
I completely agree with that.
I think that they purposefully de-sexified her compared to her role in Civil War, because I think
they 100% did.
Marvel is so worried about not being seen as progressive in every possible way that to portray Aunt May as hot and as a sexually desirable woman for the audience and for Iron Man, they really toned that down. And I think that was a mistake. I think, the meta fact that Robert Downey Jr. and Marissa Tomei were an item in the past.
Yeah, that was like a cool nod.
That was fantastic. Yeah. And out of the way, these awkward round glasses and hyped up jean shorts. It was really weird. Like, and what I would say about that, okay, listener, think about it. Think about it from a clear slate. In a way that's very defaming to Marissa Tomei. You have a naturally beautiful woman and you cover her up.
She's beautiful.
You cover her up for a progressive agenda in this case. And I think we can respect that Marvel wants...
I don't even... Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's just like...
We can respect that Marvel wants to get, more minority roles and stuff. And they've done a really good job in casting. But the way it came off is that they were hiding or ashamed of Marissa Tomei and how they portrayed her.
It was just weird because Iron Man still made comments about her.
He did, yes, exactly.
But she was a different character than she was 4 months before.
She honestly was. To that point about Iron Man, I thought Downey Jr.'s performance was very, very lacking in this movie. Extremely hammed up. Way over the top. Like, he shot all of his lines in 3 hours.
It did seem like he phoned it.
He was so hammy. I did not enjoy it. And the whole little thing at the end after Peter turns down being a thing of the Avengers, I don't know what that was or what they were trying to do. And also, I saw a thing, I forget what video it was, but like, when Happy made a point of saying, I've been holding this ring since 2008, the first Iron Man, where he was... I guess where that ring was? I don't know. I don't recall. I think that's what it was.
Oh, okay.
It was set in 2010.
Oh.
Even though it came out in 2008. So I don't know I don't know if that was like a nod to something that I'm unaware of, but it was weird. I didn't like it.
You know what? I'll make this point. One of the reasons why Robert Downey Jr. is so good as Iron Man and Tony Stark is that there are a lot of areas where their personalities are honestly similar outside of the film.
And that's why Chris Evans is a great Cap as well.
Exactly. Chris Evans is, if you read up on him, he's honestly a salt of the earth, will pull over, fix your car, pull shirt off his back and give it to you, nice guy. But Robert Downey Jr. has an ego, and we know in the past, like trying to shoehorn in Gwyneth Paltrow into the first Avengers movie, he tries to make it about him, and Spider-Man was definitively a film not about him where he's a supporting role, and that's why I think he nailed it in, is because he's not the big shot, so he'll collect his 50 mil and go on his way.
I could see it.
One last thing I want to talk about is the Venom spin-off. Kind of. It's not really a spin-off. Apparently, Spider-Man exists in that universe, but he's not going to be centric to the plot of any Venom movie. Again, played by Tom Hardy. Tom Hardy loves this podcast. We're still waiting to hear his email back, but a future guest, hopefully. But I don't understand it.
Well, apparently they're unrelated to the Marvel films.
Yes. Okay. So they exist in a universe that exists in a pocket of another universe. It's like the stupidest fucking thing ever.
Yeah, that's what Kevin Feige has said, though, is that they somehow exist in the same universe even though they're not. And it seems like the dumbest way to shoehorn in.
They're not going to draw from the universe at all, but they're going to exist. So I guess we won't see Venom in any of these current crop of Spider-Man films.
Which is fine.
We've seen it.
That's fine. I think a Venom solo movie could be cool. Venom is a very cool anti-hero. He's not always murder It's a horror
It's
film?
going to be like a horror film.
So he's going to be the baddie?
I don't know.
Oh, that's fucking terrible. That's stupid.
I think he's going to be in it with Carnage.
I did.
Oh,
hear,
yeah, I heard the Carnage thing.
I did hear that they're going horror.
Okay, I don't understand that then. Okay, so then it's going to be a blend of genres. It's not obviously it's not going to be straight horror. How could they do that?
No.
I like Carnage on screen. I would love a hard R for this because Carnage is terribly homicidal. I guess Venom. They have to. How can you portray Carnage, who routinely likes to form his symbiote hands into axes and cut people into pieces, not have that? I mean, it doesn't have to be the whole time. It can be toned down, but there's going to need to be some bloodshed.
You know what? I think they're going to go that route. Post Logan, post Deadpool, I think R is on the table.
Yeah.
And certainly I think in this case R may be the draw you need to get a big enough audience to see this.
Yeah. And maybe that is the reason they are disembodying themselves from the titan that is Marvel.
Okay, fair enough.
That makes sense.
Right?
Marvel hasn't released a R film.
They couldn't do it. To rival the success, I don't think that they could do it.
Even the Netflix series are 14A, I would say.
What character would they have? What character would they have that they could make R?
Punisher.
Okay, but they can't do that now because of this weird. And then there's this weird ambiguous connection between the Netflix series and the MCU, the movie, the cinematic universe, that they routinely reference the events of Avengers, but they're not technically the same world, right? I've heard that. I don't understand. It doesn't make any sense to me because you know what fits perfectly into that street level fighter that they are portraying now with the Defenders coming out soon is Spider-Man. Is exactly how they portrayed Spider-Man in Homecoming. That's along the same lines. Very different tones from Daredevil and Jessica Jones, and even Luke Cage was darkish. So I don't know. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
and I like Tom Hardy's casting. That's cool. But what the hell are they going to do with Venom? They're losing so much of the character of Venom by not having him intrinsically connected to Spider-Man. It doesn't make any fucking sense.
To me, it defeats the purpose.
Yes, it does. It defeats the purpose.
A Catwoman film without Batman.
Yeah, right? Totally. That's why
I really hope it's better than Catwoman.
Whoa, Jesus, it better. But they lose so much of the character. So without doing that, all they're doing is taking a name and slapping it on whatever type of movie they want to make. That does not make a good movie or a good superhero movie. The portrayal is terrible. It doesn't make any sense. You lose so much of Venom's hatred for Spidey, which is driven from the symbiote itself, from Parker rejecting the symbiote and all the negative feelings and emotions it can embody on its host. It's just
I can imagine they want to kind of stay away from that after Spider-Man 3.
Yeah, that's why I'm surprised they're even making a Venom movie. Where did this come from?
It's been in development hell for years.
Oh, okay.
We'll see. It's definitely a topic we'll come back to if they get serious about it. And
Sure.
I'll see it.
I want to see some footage.
Yeah.
I want to see some footage.
Yeah,
if they're smart, they will immediately portray Venom on screen.
Yeah.
In the first trailer. Immediately. Yeah. Maybe even Carnage, depending on what role he has in the movie. I don't know.
Yeah, show me a cool trailer with Tom Hardy being Venom and y'all be there.
Yes. I'm obviously going to see it, of course. I mean, I saw Dunkirk that has Tom Hardy in it.
How are you going to rant about it if you don't see it?
And you know what? The great thing about a symbiote suit is it can expand to Tom Hardy's ever-expanding body. Yeah. You don't got to make a special plain cockpit for him.
No.
No, it'll be cool. I mean, he's a draw nowadays. He's a legitimate draw. So we'll see where it goes. Yeah, we'll see where it goes.
All right. That's all the thoughts I was having revolving Homecoming.
If you guys had to rate this film, what would you say?
Okay, what is our rating scale? A 1 to 10?
Let's just say a 1
to 10. Percentage?
1 to
like
10.
A rotten percentage?
For today, we'll go 1 to 10.
We'll change how we review movies every time. We might go gold, silver, bronze. We might go 2 stars, 5 stars.
Okay.
But this time out of 10.
All right, I'll start. I think this is a 6.5 out of 10. Again, like I said, it is above average. Now, that may sound low, but that's still like an 8 and above is like a great movie, right?
It's okay. You're allowed your opinion.
Oh, so I think I'm like immediately defending myself against our stupid listener, who now I've switched to loving and now I've hated.
You used to call listeners smart.
Well, now my opinion is jaded. I am alienating and
you've completely alienated listeners.
I'm sorry, listener.
Leland Steel, sponsored by Rexon Pharmaceuticals high blood pressure pills. He gets an unlimited supply.
Rexon knows what's right.
All right, Moby, what do you think?
You know what? I am going to give it don't kill me, Leland. I'm going to give it a 7.5, and I would go about a 6.5. I'm giving it a point for Michael Keaton's performance, really elevating it to a memorable film, an
That's
above
valid.
average film.
That's why I got a 6.5 for me.
Very
Not
good.
a 6.
Ordinarily,
But
it would have been a 2.
That's entirely no. I told you, like I said, it's an above average. That is an above average rating.
Sounds good, Marty.
I'm gonna go with 8.
What?
A solid B. I really liked it.
I just said 8 is great. 8 and above is great.
To you.
You think that movie's great?
To you.
No, that's 80%.
I think it's great. It's a good. I really enjoyed
I
it.
think it's great.
Yeah.
Like Civil War, or not Civil War. Winter Soldier is great.
Winter Soldier is like a 9.5.
Yes, Winter Soldier is very near perfect for me. I love Winter Soldier.
Yeah,
But that's because I have the biggest heart on for Chris Evans.
Fine, 7.5 to 8.
Okay.
No, I'm gonna stick with 8.
Oh, fuck you.
8.
Anyways,
This is why we don't put a number on things.
Go see this film.
Yeah, fine. Go see it.
Go see it. Listener, argue with us.
All right.
Okay.
This is Moby signing off. Tally ho.
This is Marty. This has been episode number 2, and Leland.
Okay, yeah, I'm Leland. Thanks for listening, listener. I'm sorry I made fun of you. Again, if you want to check out some of my board game reviews, you can go to lelandsteelfiction.wordpress.com. Follow me on Twitter at T_HUD_Rapid. Thanks for listening, guys.